Welcome to Power to Speak, the podcast. And my guest today is Daniel J. Moore from Iron Dragon Designs. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
You are more than welcome. So you are creative director and founder of Iron Dragon Designs. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do there.
So Iron Dragon Design is my little corner of the freelance world. I'm a graphic designer and brand strategist. So not only do I do those pretty nice logo designs, layout designs and print designs and everything that makes your business look nice, but I also look at the strategy behind it and help you understand why you're in business and why people should care about that and how to connect better with them.
Okay. So how do you get them? What is it that you do that helps them find out what their brand is all about?
So one of the main things I really do with people is a lot of digging through with workshops. They tend to be individual and one-to-one workshops with business owners or small teams that work in the same business. And what we do is we delve into what it actually means to be that business, why they're in business beyond the point of making money, why they're in business, why people should connect with them. And we do this by looking at their values, their mission, their direction, their character, their voice, all these things that make up what the brand is and the feelings that they want to associate with the brand, so that when they take it out to market, people can get those emotions, get those feelings that match with what the business owners want them to feel.
Okay, well, obviously, from the point of view of what I do, which is Power to Speak and working with people on their stories. I think it's this very similar thing. You do it visually in two dimensions, and I do it maybe more three-dimensionally. In that, obviously, I delve deep into people's stories, find out what makes them tick. So, if a brand comes to you, how do you do that? How do you find their voice?
So quite often people come to me because they've lost it a bit, or they have a point of confusion between themselves and maybe their audience, or sometimes the team itself. And the main thing we need to do is we need to look back through the history and also understand where the business is going and where it's trying to get to. So there's a lot of sort of digging through what's come before to find, as you say, that story, to understand that why, and then using that information that we've got from why everything started, taking that, placing it as a template onto where they are currently and where they're looking to go forwards from that. And using that information, we can then look at what's actually working, what's not working, what's strong, what's weak, and we can move forwards to give them that voice that they need.
Yeah. And so does that entail sort of finding out about their stories or how they started?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to understand their stories, and it's really important for them to understand their story as well. So quite often we do dive quite deeply into the story of the company, which is often entwined with their why they got started. Quite a lot of companies I work with started because they saw something that wasn't working in an industry, and felt that they could fill that gap and make something that works better. So quite a lot of the time, there's a lot of that involved in the why they got into what they're doing. Using those stories is really important to understand the voice and the tone of the brand, because those stories inherently have characters in them, and those characters have a voice that needs to get out quite often.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of talking my language, as I say, coming from an acting background. So you're talking about character and archetypes. So I noticed on your website you have this sort of archetype character that you encourage people, brands to grab hold of. What's that all about? I mean, is that creating a character that is separate to their brand?
It's interesting because it's not sort of a character in kind of the way of a mascot. So, for example, Tony the Tiger or things of that sort of nature. It's actually kind of an internal voice. It's more sort of the guiding principles of the business, basically. And the whole idea is it follows the it follows the findings of a psychiatrist called Carl Jung, who was a Swiss psychologist, I think he was. And basically he put down these 12 archetypes that are in most stories that we have as a race created through the eons, basically. And he's come up with these 12 archetypes, and every brand has an archetype. It has a certain way of doing things. And the reason they're important is because people, especially when being marketed to in this day and age, they need information as quickly as possible. It needs to be fast, it needs to be readily available, and it needs to be digestible as well. It needs to be easy to understand. And these 12 archetypes are archetypes we as people inherently understand. If I said rebel to you, for example, you'd understand pretty much, you get an idea of what a rebel is. You'd have an idea of how that kind of acts. And therefore, if you come across a rebel company, you get feelings and emotions based upon that archetype very quickly. So you can understand whether not you want to interact with that brand or not.
Yeah. And there's a quiz on your website. So what happens in the quiz, and will it take you directly to find out what your archetype is?
Yes, so the whole idea of the quiz, it's a bit of fun. It sort of takes 5 to 10 minutes for most people, and the whole idea is to try and answer it as the brand that you are, so that you can figure out what the archetype of the brand should be. Now, obviously, there's a lot more depth to it than just that, but it's a very good starting position to question the character and tone of voice, especially that your brand is putting out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will be something I may well go and do. I'm quite looking forward to doing that. Obviously, I will put that link in the show notes later. So there must be some interesting stories that have come out from people when they've discovered their archetype. If they come out as a rebel and never really thought that they were they were going to be a rebel.
Yeah, there was one gentleman, especially an older gentleman, who came out as the seducer archetype, and he wasn't quite sure what to think about that to begin with. But then when I had a chat with him, he understood a bit more about what that meant, and about the fact that seducers are all actually about creating a community around them. They're about bringing people in and showing them the best thing for that person. It's all about, it's less about temptation and more about giving people what it is they truly want, finding their desire and giving it to them. So it's there've been a few people who've gone, really, am I that? And then there've been a few people who've gone, yeah, that's 100% me. I'm very glad that came out like that. So it's very interesting to see the answers and responses.
Yes, no, I can imagine. So is this based on Joseph Campbell did the hero's journey and did the different characters that you meet along a hero's journey? Is that something that, I mean, I'm not sure whether Carl Jung came up with that first?
It's not too dissimilar. Yeah, it's got some similar sort of points to it, certainly. And obviously with story brands, they go on the hero's journey, and that's what it's all about. So it ties in quite closely to that. Yes, certainly.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love the hero's journey. I do love a hero's journey, and it's something that I like to do with my clients, is to find out what journeys they've been on, because so often, it's the best way I find for people to really feel confident selling what it is that they sell, whether it's a product or whether it's a service, is because they can find something in their story that is relatable to their audience.
Absolutely, and that's how we tend to buy into even the largest brands is its relatability. We like to see ourselves in their shoes and understand how that kind of works. And it is fascinating seeing brand stories. And when it comes to the idea, especially when we're looking at more of the nitty gritty kind of side of brand, and looking like the unique selling point and things of that sort of nature, which I'm sure all business owners will have known that term. Understanding your story actually brings those out more than anything else, because quite usually the unique selling point, especially to small businesses, is the person involved in actually running that business, and their unique story and their unique tale of how they got to this point and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote an article a year or so ago that was basically, you are your selling point. You are your unique selling point. So yeah, I totally agree with that there. So how did you get to this point in your career? What was it that kind of, took you on your hero's journey?
So we're doing my story now.
Yeah. What's your story?
So it's difficult to sort of pin down where it starts. My mum is an art teacher. So that probably takes quite a lot of impetus into why I'm a creative. A levels, I did all the creative stuff. So I did graphic design, I did art, I did IT, all those things heavily involved in the idea of going into this line of work. Then at university, I chose to do computer games design, which was a Bachelor of Science degree, which was a bit odd because we went quite heavily into the psychology of game players and why games players do what they do when set certain tasks or when seeing certain visual or audio input. And that was fascinating, just understanding and experimenting and finding out what people would do in certain situations. When I left university, it was during the early 2000s financial crisis. And unfortunately, the guys that I'd worked with on my placement year were nowhere to be found. So I found it very difficult to get a job in the industry. So what I did was I retrained from the 3D design I've been doing, lost the dimension, and went down into sort of 2D design and illustration and graphic design, retraining myself through that. Then after a stint of a couple of years, working various jobs as I tried to find my way into the industry, I think I had about 40 interviews across 2 years in graphic design, but couldn't find a job, kept coming second place. Decided that meant I was probably good enough to do it on my own if I was continually getting interviews, and just started my own business.
Well, I mean, that's the way to go. I thought you were going to say I knew I had to start a business when nobody would give me a job.
Well,
But actually,
yeah.
but no, I mean, absolutely what you're saying is the fact that if you know, on paper, people are saying to you, come in, we need to see you, we need to see you, is that you have something there that people want. I mean, I've got your logo I love, which is I've got here. Let me show you. There we go. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this lovely logo. Where did the concept? What is the concept behind that?
I remember having the idea in a bar, and just all I had on me was an Asda receipt and a pen, and just drawing it on the back of an Asda receipt. But the concept is based on. So the whole it's probably to sort of speak of the whole concept of Iron Dragon is actually based on a tale from I think it's either China or Japan, and it's basically about a school of koi fish swimming up a stream, and they reach a waterfall and they start trying to climb this waterfall. And in the forest there are demons, and they're jeering at them and throwing rocks at them and trying to get them to turn back. And over 100 years, all of them turn back except one of them, who reaches the top of the waterfall. And the gods see this, and they're so impressed with this act of tenacity that they, as a reward, they turn it into a dragon, which in Eastern mythology is more a sign of strength and wisdom. It's a very sort of wise creature in the Eastern mythos. And that's kind of where I got the idea from, was this very strong, very sharp, pointed kind of figure that had a direction and had something it was trying to achieve and wouldn't give up until it had done it.
Wow. I mean, there is a theme that runs through everything that you do. I've seen, Daniel, that there is this kind of real mythology and legend and characters and stories that I think connect with. I mean, you were saying that obviously it's unusual for somebody from an artistic background to go into a science that computer science was, but actually you talking about the psychology that came from that, again, kind of ties in with this whole thing of stories and brand and talking to people and finding out what their stories are and delving deeper. Where did that interest come from? Because I know that you do role plays. Tell us a little bit about that and how that started and how it all kind of ties together.
So firstly, thank you for saying all of that. That is carefully cultivated, because my archetype is the explorer, and the explorer is all about the wilds and gaining understanding, and it's kind of gaining spirituality, small s spirituality. So gaining something from exploration, from going out and going, why is this a thing? I want to go and find out, and pushing boundaries. And it comes a lot from my childhood. I've always had a really active imagination, overactive. If you asked any of my teachers from reception all the way up to sixth form, all of my teachers were just like, could you just focus? And the answer was no, I couldn't just focus, because I was always wondering what was over there, what's over that hill, what's going on over there. And that's why I got into video games, because video games quite often allowed me to take those parts of me and really explore places. I always loved exploration games, being left in a big wide world and being able to explore, just like how I love, my holidays tend to be to places like Japan, where I can explore, the wilds of Japan, Tasmania, places of that sort of ilk. So for me, that idea of exploration has always been at the heart of who I am as a person. And that's why I wanted to get it across in the brand, because that's what I'm about when I come to dealing with other people, is helping them to explore those deep, dark places that they didn't really understand. And in saying, bringing the legends into it, the whole idea of mythos and the whole idea of there being something, over that hill, there might be something magical that we don't understand and we don't yet know about. Bringing that kind of slight bit of magic into the everyday, to me, is really important, because it helps make everything just that little bit more, little bit brighter and a little bit more interesting. So, as you quite rightly say, one of my hobbies is I'm a live action role player, which, for those of you who don't know, it means I basically do kind of role play. So take a character and be that character for a weekend. Here we go. And as you see, we get dressed up in armor, we have weapons, and so we get to sort of role play as these sort of heroes for a weekend. And that again sort of plays off to the kind of the actor in me, the amateur kind of dramatic sort of thing of it is really exciting, and it's very fluid because it's not scripted, but it also gives me that opportunity just to explore parts of myself a bit more and be a character and pretend to be something else for a little bit, and it's thoroughly interesting to do, and it's very cathartic. Hitting your friends around the head with a sword for a weekend can be quite a good way to get some feelings out.
Yes, no, I can imagine that. I might have to. I have some friends. So, is it historical stuff that you do, or is it fantasy?
No, the stuff I do is fantasy, so it's Tolkien-esque, based on that kind of elves and orcs and that kind of thing. So it's sword and sorcery, magic, that kind of thing is where mine's based. I know there's a lot of reenactors who are the historical ones, and they get a bit funny when they get confused for us. So we've got to be very careful not to tread on their toes.
Yes, they are quite serious.
Very serious.
Absolutely. So the whole look of your website, everything that you put out there on social media, it has that feel, that kind of fantasy feel, that kind of legend, myths, and that we've already discussed. Do you feel like do you attract people to your brand that are interested in similar sort of things? And if you are just obviously trying to attract everybody, or certainly just get that sort of traction, customers to you, does it stand in your way? I'm just wondering whether, when you are talking to other people about their brands, whether your brand is fantastic, looks gorgeous, I have to say, but when you're talking to other people about theirs, would you put them off being too specific in their branding?
It often depends on what they're trying to achieve, and I think that's the most important thing. For me, as a creative, the most important thing to me is that I can gel with people, that I can talk to them openly, and that I can have a bit of a rapport being with them, especially working with brand and strategy, because sometimes I have to ask some really difficult questions to people that get quite personal in some ways, so that I can get to the meat of the matter and understand what it is they're trying to actually show beyond what they've got on the surface. There's often something deeper there that we're trying to kind of achieve and connect with. So to do that, I need to be trusted to a certain degree, and often the best way of doing that is kind of pre-legitimizing my clients. So some people will not work well with me, and that is absolutely fine, because equally I wouldn't work well with them, and all it's going to achieve is negative feelings and a difficult working relationship. So I'd much prefer they went to someone who they can get on with and can do what needs to be done for them, rather than come to me and waste both our time. That's where the character comes in quite a lot. And similarly, with a lot of the brands I work with, we look at the idea of going, actually, what you want to do is stand for something. I use this terminology, brand your ground. So it's like sticking your flag in the ground and going, this is where I'm standing, having that flag there, and then attracting the people who want to interact with you and who have similar values and that kind of thing, almost bringing your tribe in. Because it means you're spending the time then working with the people you want to work with. And so generally speaking, from an artist position and possibly from other positions, you get your best work out that way. If you're interacting and dealing with people you want to be dealing with, you're always going to be showing your best face. And that's kind of what I try and help people with, is it doesn't matter if this sector doesn't want anything to do with you. That's fine, because this other section of people really want to involve and get engaged with you. And so by honing in on who those people are, you can generally corner a market much better.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. I think that is that's finding your voice, isn't it? And
absolutely.
that's, you have to be authentic in the way that you put yourself out on the market to attract those people that you want to work with, and that will be a good fit for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's go back slightly, because I was quite interested in the whole kind of Japanese thing, because you're learning Japanese. So how did that come about, and how are you going to use that?
It's one of those kind of things that I've always been interested in. The weird thing is I've always been awful at languages. I've just had funnily enough, the school I went to was a language college, and by year 9, I think we're doing 4 different languages. It's like French, Spanish, German, and Latin for no reason. I just used to fail miserably at all of them. But Japanese always interested me. It's an interesting language. The shapes and forms of it almost tell a story, similar to any other sort of pictographic language like Chinese as well. And I've just always had a real fascination with some of the sort of myths and legends that come out of Japan. The culture itself is really interesting because there's such a strange juxtaposition. I have been over there before as well. I've had a holiday out in Japan, traveled sort of up and down the south coast a bit. And it's one of those places that's just fascinating. And they've also got such an interesting design ethos as well. There's a certain simplicity to quite a lot of that design, which I really like. It's all based on sort of like, Buddhist and that kind of designs, and the whole ethos is based on exploration and looking around and understanding the natural beauty of the world. So to me, that all of that really talks to everything I've been speaking about exploration, about sort of how I approach things. So there's a real kind of Japanese element in quite a lot of the design that I do as well.
I mean, it's I can see that. So again, it's adding to your story, isn't it? It's adding to your brand. It's adding to your the authentic side of you that obviously that will then come through in the design that you do for other people, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is why standing out and showing what you stand for early is really good, because there's a lot of people that and a lot of businesses that wouldn't work with, that my particular style and approach wouldn't work with. So having that on show immediately helps those people know that they've got to look somewhere else for what they need.
And where does ownership of your brand come in then? Is that on a similar vein? Is when you sort of take ownership of your brand?
Yeah. So one of the most important things really is that people understand what the brand actually is, because this is often a point of confusion. So it's not the logo. The logo isn't the brand, and it's not even all the visuals and the voice itself. The brand is actually what is in the hearts and minds of the audience. That is your brand. What they think and feel when they see you in the marketplace, basically. So the important thing there of taking ownership of that is, while you don't have direct control over the brand, because as I said, it's in the thoughts and hearts of others, you can manipulate that by understanding what it is that your customers think and feel, and by understanding what you want them to think and feel, you can utilize brand identity, so colors, shapes, psychology, and all of that kind of thing, and the voice and tone, to subtly influence that and help people get to the thoughts and feelings you want to associate with your brand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, obviously what you do is very creative. I mean, everything that you do is very creative. Do you have a definition of creativity? What is creativity to you? I know that's a hard throw that one at you like that.
That's asking the big questions. That is. I think creativity is it's more of, rather than being like a state of mind or a physical thing, it's more an allowance to yourself. It's allowing yourself to do things for the sake of doing things, to look at things in a different way, to maybe, you know, see the world through slightly different eyes. That's what I've always thought creativity was, you know, taking what's going on in your world or around you and adding something to it or changing it some way to better fit sort of what you think is out there, basically. And that sounds like such a weird sort of kind of response to that.
Well, I did throw it at you.
Yeah,
you did very well there. Well done.
I think everyone has creativity in them, and I think creativity can be used no matter what industry you're in. You know, I've seen accountants who are very creative, who are very good at finding solutions to problems, because even the idea of finding out of the box solutions, that's creative thinking. And it's all about, I think creativity is all about understanding the world as it is and making a change based on what you want to see.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. When I've spoken to people about creativity before, I've had somebody said it's just doing. I mean, it's literally just physically doing something. It's anything you do for just the pure pleasure of doing it, I suppose. Absolutely. Like playing, you know, a big thing
absolutely. Creativity
around what I do.
Play.
Yeah,
it's that kind of it helps it helps sort your head out almost, in a way.
Yes.
It helps you to not justify your existence, but organize your existence sometimes. That's why, you know, doodling is such a good thing. Doodling is amazing. When I was, you know, working through whatever job I could, and I was working in a call center, I had, you know, pads that I'd write down sums on to figure out, you know, the best insurances for people. And surrounding these sums, there were just doodles all over the page that I just scribble pictures while I was talking to people to allow myself to work through problems. And that's that again is what I sort of see creativity as, is that working through of problems.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, that is so creative. I mean, I love solving problems, and it's part of how I feel I create, because obviously that's the way you brainstorm, you innovate. That's how it happens. Absolutely. So how have you coped in lockdown? Were you able to continue working, be creative? Did you do anything that helped you with your creativity and your well-being?
So as the brand might suggest, funny enough, I was working quite a lot in the travel industry, so you can probably imagine how that went during the first part of COVID. But I've expanded somewhat since there. But yes, I've done loads of creative stuff during lockdown. It's been one of those sort of times where I've not been told off for not going outside a bit more. So there's been a lot of painting, a lot of sketching and drawing, a bit of writing, you know, here and there as well. So there's been a lot of creativity during that period. So I feel I used that quite well to, you know, to deal with being locked down and deal with what was going on. But I appreciate that that's not something that everyone's able to do. So I appreciate how difficult it could have been for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were quite open on LinkedIn about your own mental health and issues that you've had in the past. How did you sort of not overcome it, but how have you learnt to deal and support your own mental health?
I really count myself as very lucky, because even though mid-20s, I wasn't achieving what I wanted to be achieving, and I think it's a very common thing, especially in young men. And I had depression and anxiety, and I had it pretty bad for a while. It was kind of the thing where, you know, if I got out of bed one day, I'd be like, great, I've managed to get out of bed. That's an achievement. But the creativity, and again, this is why I count myself as quite lucky, is because I've got one of those minds that has the ability to think both creatively and analytically, which is quite uncommon. So I was lucky in that kind of respect, that I went, okay, what are the triggers? What's causing me these problems? And what can I do to alleviate them? And one of the things I figured out was allowing myself to be myself and to enjoy those things that I enjoy, and giving myself the time and the effort to work on myself, even if that was simply just going, today I just feel like drawing pictures in a book. That's what I'm going to do today. and giving myself and allowing myself that time to be creative for the sake of it really saved me a bit, really, there. But also from the analytical side, it allowed me to look at my problems as a separate entity to myself, to look at my mental health and say, although this is a part of me, it is a separate part of me that I can take apart and understand how to work through. I remember one day I actually took everything off my kitchen, off my dining room table, took all the stuff off of it, and moved the table into the center of the dining room, and physically kind of thought about this box on the table, and I envisioned this box on the table, and that box was my depression. And I physically walked around the table and I looked at it from different angles, and I tried to get a hold on it and understand it. And that really helped me to kind of strategize around what was causing this. And kind of this weird exercise of physically looking at it sort of cleared my mind quite a lot and gave me the opportunity to straighten some things out. And again, sketching and doodling helped because it was something I could do with my hands and let my mind kind of work on its own. So really that kind of thing was very helpful to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. So did somebody tell you that was a strategy to use to visualize your depression as something separate?
That came from, as you can see, all the maps behind me. Some of the games I play, I really enjoy strategy games, and I really enjoy thinking out problems in a creative kind of way. And it just kind of came from that. At the time I played, and I still do play sort of quite a lot of like tabletop role-playing games and board games and things of that sort of nature. And so I kind of just went, well, hang on, why didn't I see this as a problem in one of my tabletop games? How do I solve a problem in my tabletop games? Is I envision it on the table. Okay, let's do that. And I just, put this imaginary box on the table and just started walking around it.
Wow, that's amazing. So what advice would you give somebody then that's because running your own business is quite isolating, I find sometimes. You're kind of, here I am in my living room, just working away. Have you got any advice for anybody that's sort of in a similar situation or is getting feelings that their mental health might be suffering?
I think the most important thing is to not be afraid to ask for help. I think that we often we get into a situation where we feel that, especially with things like depression and anxiety, that asking for help is going to be a bother on people. But it's not. Quite often people won't, because we're so wrapped up in our own lives, we won't notice when other people are going through something. As I said, I was very lucky in that I had the tools to deal with my own mental health. And it's not like, I got over it and it's gone. It's still there. It's still a part of me, but it's something that I know the triggers for, and I know I can deal with in a certain way. But I know that the most important thing to especially young people is to just be unafraid to ask for a bit of help. And it's great for business owners as well. I've got a couple of people that I go to when I go, I'm having a bad day here. Can we have a little chat, or do you want to go for a coffee or something like that? And building that network is so important. Because you don't just get work through it, you also get sanity through it, and a support network, and having that available is super helpful. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found that in lockdown. I was working in venues and running workshops, running classes in face to face, doing improvisation. I never thought I could do improvisation online. You can.
Yeah.
And so when lockdown happened, I was suddenly at home. I was here with my daughter, but I was sort of vaguely alone working on my own. And actually those networks that I joined were quite a lifeline, actually, to actually have a room full of people on a screen to communicate with and to support, to give me that support. And obviously we met in a networking Zoom room. Yeah. So how did that help you through lockdown in terms of just your well-being?
It just meant that I knew I wasn't alone. I remember in the first lockdown, there was this whole adage going around of we're all in this boat together, which I thought was nonsense. We're all in the same storm together. But we're all clinging onto different things. Some of us are in yachts, and some of us are on just about on a bit of wood floating in the ocean. But it kind of had that leveling experience of I could talk to anyone, and a lot of people were going through similar things. And again, working on my own for a few years prior to the lockdowns and everything gave me that kind of resilience that I needed, that when the lockdown happened, I wasn't immediately, I knew a lot of people who were crushed by it, who really didn't know what to do with themselves through it. But having that ability to talk to each other and be able to vocalize it is so important. And I found that a lot of the people who started to get really low were the ones who didn't know how to talk to other people about it, and how to leverage their network. And whenever someone said, "How are you doing?" when, "Yeah, I'm great," when really they weren't doing great. And it was always the ones who went, "I'm not so well actually," who got over things faster, because then someone else to go, "Oh, what's going on?" And just having that is so important. So actually I found myself in a position where I was actually, watching quite a lot for people I was talking to, and just making sure they were okay, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember watching very early on in lockdown, Brené Brown's name kept coming up. And I don't know if you know Brené Brown as being a TED talker who is a research scientist, I think, originally, and she did a talk about vulnerability. And I watched that, and it just made me realize that actually, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to come across as vulnerable, to show your vulnerability, because we all need that. It's not a weakness, it's something that's actually a strength, to be able to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that we as people have a huge and varied set of skills and abilities, and this idea that one person can be all things to all people, which again goes into brand as well, is utter nonsense. And being able to know where your own the extent of your abilities ends and where you need assistance is a really powerful, helpful tool. It's a really good strength, I think, that can help prevent you from going into burnout and pushing yourself further into a spiral. So I absolutely believe in the power of asking people for help.
Yeah. I've sort of come across a couple of times just in the last week this thing of, you don't have to be the cleverest person in the room. Nobody knows everything. It's you are going to go to your grave not knowing something, so don't feel the need to walk into a room or be the person that knows everything, because you never can be. So give yourself a break, basically.
Yes, this is my favorite one at the moment. Give yourself a break, for goodness sake.
Absolutely. So where's your brand going from here? What's coming up for you?
Further into the wilds, I think. Funnily enough, I'm just doing a bit of something I do every 2 years. Is I take everything that I've done in the previous 2 years and everything before that, see where the journey's come so far, and then make sure that the alignment is all correct. Because obviously the interesting thing about stepping out as a metaphor into the world is, if you're 1 degree off track, it may not seem like much, but after 2 years, it may have brought you into a completely different position that you weren't expecting to be in. So at the moment, I'm doing a bit of, as I do every sort of other January, a bit of interior soul searching, making sure that my brand is where I want it to be, and where I make sure that the trajectory is all correct, and make sure I'm going the right way. And then from there, I'm doing a lot more work with workshops with people this year to help them get to a similar place, get them onto the right track on their brand, and helping them push forward to reach the people that they want to reach.
Yeah, no, I love that idea of, if you're 1 degree out, by the time you get 6 months down the line, that 1 degree has increased.
It's especially important if people are going through exponential growth. It's so important then, because if the growth is really quick, if you're 1 degree out and you're moving faster, you're going to be even further out than you ever thought you could be. So especially for people going through big growth, it's worth looking inwards first to make sure everything is going in the right direction.
Yeah, perfect. So tell us a bit about is it the Brand Adventurer?
Yes, the Brand Adventurer workshop. So this is my kind of 1-to-1 or 1-to-many workshop, but it's all based on whoever buys it. Basically, it's based on their business. So if you go on the workshop, you're not going to be in a room with loads of other businesses that I'm just talking at. It's an intense course that's based around the singular business, and we go into a deep dive in it. And the whole point of it is to try and realign everything and to understand where everything kind of is currently, and to make sure everything is going right on the way forward. So we look at brand values, we look at brand mission, we look at again where the brand is going, where you want it to go in the next 5 to 10 years. We look at the positioning of the brand, where it is currently, who's interacting with it, who you want to interact with it, brand character, brand voice, brand personality, all of these things, so that we can understand what it means to be that brand and how we want it to act going forwards.
Yeah, wow, that's so you sort of covering quite a lot of ground there, aren't you, really?
Yeah, it really is. It's usually sort of a 3-hour session, or split down into 2.5-hour sessions, because it can get quite intense in places.
Yes, yeah. So how can people find out? Where can they find out about that?
It's all advertised on my website.
Let me show you the website. There we go.
Or alternatively, if you find me on LinkedIn and contact me about it, I am running a special deal at the moment. It's £199 for anyone who books in by the 12th of February. They don't have to do it before the 12th of February, but they have to book it before the 12th of February. Otherwise, if you catch me on LinkedIn or are interested but not sure about it, I also do a free consultation, 30-minute consultation, if you want to have a chat about it and see if it is right for you and what you're trying to achieve.
Brilliant. Just recap a little bit on the offer at the moment, because you went silent for a second, and I'm not sure if that was me or you.
I'll do it again then.
Yeah.
So the offer is the Brand Adventure course until the 12th of February is £199, down from £300. You only have to book it before then. You don't have to do it before then. So if you think you're going to do, especially if you think you can do a rebrand later in the year, it's worth getting onto that now. Booking it in for later in the year when you need it. But if you book before the 12th of February, you get £101 off of it. Brilliant.
Sounds like a good deal. Fabulous. And obviously I've put on the screen there your website, but I will, for those of you that are listening, I will put all of these links in the show notes. So it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic talking to you, Daniel. I'm just so interested in the whole kind of concept of your own brand. I find that really, the psychology behind branding is something that I'm beginning to understand slightly now that I've come into this world of content marketing. So is there anywhere else people can find you? Anything else that you want to give a shout out today before we finish?
Follow me on social media. I do a lot of this kind of thing on social. So at the moment I'm going through a 12-month kind of social calendar where I deep dive each of the archetypes one every month, and that's been quite interesting. Got a lot of engagement. So if you want to follow me on social media, that's a great place to see and discover a bit more about how this can help you.
Fantastic, brilliant. Oh, well, that's great, and it's been so lovely to talk to you. So I will let you go off and enjoy the rest of your day. And Daniel Moore of Iron Dragon Design, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.